What's up guys, it's Storm here. You saw the title of the video. We know both of these characters very well already. Two of the strongest characters in the entire One Piece verse. With the Wano arc ending in the anime, and Kaido seemingly being dead, it is pretty interesting to put him up against Shanks, who appears in the sort of epilogue of the Wano arc. Also, it's pretty interesting as these two have already interacted in the canon of the story. So without further ado, we can discuss the red-haired emperor, Shanks, against the world's strongest creature, Kaido. Considering he's definitely the more top-heavy of these two in terms of feats and lore, we can start with Kaido. Kaido is a bit of a weird character in that he's one of the only top tiers we've seen in an extended fight with another top tier, essentially giving him most of, if not the best feats in the story. We are introduced to Kaido in Punk Hazard by Law, who says he is known as the most powerful creature in the world. Later in Kaido's proper introduction, we get another statement about Kaido's strength, while also receiving one of the best character intros Oda has ever put to paper due to how raw it is. Kaido is said to essentially be unkillable, which leads people to say in a one-on-one fight, always bet on Kaido, and that he is the strongest pirate alive. Even Zoro during the raid says he heard Kaido is the toughest in the world. Now, if you listen closely to everything I've said, you would notice that Oda goes out of his way to make all of Kaido's statements either hearsay or rumors. The Ace novel also shares this same notion about Kaido's title being based on people having discussions about him. Here's a quote from the Ace novel about the Yonko, but I'll just only mention the Kaido part. According to Skull, the pirate-obsessed nerd, in terms of sheer battle power in a one-on-one fight, Kaido was likely the strongest. If you were sitting around drinking, telling stories, and debating merits, you might conclude that Kaido was the invincible strongest creature alive. Even in the novel, it's more so of a debate that people would have, as opposed to known fact. The portion that says if you were sitting around drinking, telling stories, and debating merits, is once again pushing this rumor narrative I've been constructing. These statements always come with the caveat of people say or he is known as opposed to other people with these types of world's strongest titles in the story, such as Whitebeard or Mihawk. Whitebeard is said to be the strongest pirate back in Roger's era up until the current story, without any sort of rumor or hearsay implication until Marineford, where he removed his meds and he's shown to be drastically weaker than before. Mihawk is the world's strongest swordsman, and it is said time and time again that this is the case. The Viva card even says that Mihawk sits atop all swordsmen, and that he is the strongest in name and actuality. Dragon also has been introduced with his world's strongest criminal title in his title box. This all leads me to doubt the title is true in earnest, and is more so based on Kaido's lore of being unkillable, and how that would actually translate into combat with other top tiers. The conclusion that's being drawn by all of these people, with Kaido's lore taken into account, is essentially, how would you beat an enemy that cannot be killed? Luffy defeating Kaido and him seemingly being killed in magma makes me overall doubt that Kaido is truly the strongest living thing on land, sea, or air. Even in the SBS, when Oda alludes to Luffy's future Gear 5 transformation, he refers to Kaido as the supposed strongest in the world. The title is likely the result of Kaido going around challenging the 4 emperors and everyone who's considered strong until he acquired this lore of being unkillable or the strongest. Killer during the raid refers to Kaido being the strongest pirate alive, but Oda made sure that the Kid Pirates weren't able to meet Shanks in their scuffle with the Red Hair Pirates, which lets us avoid an easy conclusion to this video. With that strongest title out of the way, we can get into a more feats-based scale of Kaido, starting off with his Devil Fruit. Kaido has eaten the fish fruit model Seiryu, which allows him to transform into a dragon that heightens his already high physical abilities. He gets access to multiple elemental attacks such as fire, wind, and lightning. It also gives him an extremely tough hide that increases his durability and endurance, which, as I said before, gives him this unkillable aura to the people of the world. Kaido is also a master of all 3 types of haki. Kaido was actually the one who introduces us, the readers, to Conqueror's Haki's advanced application. The Viva card actually refers to this as the ultimate essence of haki that is an unseen attack that only the strongest of the world can achieve. Kaido backs this up, saying only a handful of the strongest can utilize this technique, which involves infusing yourself with Conqueror's Haki, similar to how people infuse themselves with Armament Haki. With Kaido being a user of it, this obviously makes him a part of that handful of the strongest. Kaido is also a master of the Color of Observation Haki, which he showcases later in his fight with Luffy, using his thieving drunk techniques and future sight in order to blitz a Snake Man Luffy. Kaido's armament is also capable of making even a master of the technique throb in pain during a clash, while also negating lost teleportation techniques due to its potency. Kaido before the events of the raid is shown to be able to fight Napoleon Big Mom one-on-one in his base form as they split the skies with each other. While on the roof, Kaido unleashes more and more of his power as his fights go on, which showcases his amazing durability and endurance that I mentioned before. From the Scabbards, to the Supernova, to Yamato, to Luffy, Kaido is able to hold out against everything thrown at him until the very final blow from Luffy, which is easily among the best feats we've ever seen in the story. Kaido fighting a Gear 5 Luffy is impressive considering his lore and the ridiculous powers he has. Kaido is unironically fighting someone with a god devil fruit. He shows he's able to swap with this Luffy and exchange blows with him, with things like his Kundali Dragon Swarm or his Ragnaroku attack. In the ending parts of the battle before the final clash, we even see him start to overpower Luffy in their exchanges, which is pretty impressive considering Kaido has been said to be heavily wounded preceding these final clashes with Luffy to the point where the mythical dragon even starts to fall on one of his knees. The final clash he has with Luffy also shows that they are on a similar level, as it was an extended Haki clash, which does end in Luffy's victory, which implies Luffy's Haki surpasses Kaido's. This isn't a Luffy vs Kaido video, so I know people have their own thoughts on the matter, so for now, just consider Luffy and Kaido on the same level, because I don't feel like getting attacked for saying one is stronger than the other, or who is more nerfed than the other, as either way, I think we all can agree they're on the same level at the very least. Last thing I'll mention for the dragon is that Green Bull says the only reason he didn't attack Wano was specifically due to Kaido's presence, which can be considered impressive depending on your interpretation on the statement. Maybe you think he's referring to presumably being weaker than Kaido in a one-on-one, which is probable anyway, just looking at their matchup and the scaling overall. Or you could take a more 3 powers route, which I go over in my Why Don't the Admirals Attack the Yonko video. Overall, Kaido is incredibly durable to the point where Luffy's comparing him to the resistant Seraphims on Egghead that can repeatedly get up from all of his attacks. Kaido also has incredible top tier power in the verse that allowed him to be the biggest obstacle Luffy's ever overcome in the story, while also having attacks that could put Gear 5 Luffy on his back with incredible speed comparable to Luffy as well. Shanks has been a mysterious character in the One Piece world due to his few appearances in the manga, but as of the final saga, we get to see him in action and go after the One Piece while he acquires more and more feats. Shanks is known for his uses of Haki throughout the series, so we'll quickly go over that first. Shanks actually has access to the advanced application of Conqueror's Haki like Kaido, but his proficiency seems to go even deeper. With the release of One Piece Film Red, we learn that Shanks has the ability to cancel out others' ability to see the future using his Conqueror's Haki. So much so that he actually has the epithet of the Killer of Observation. And I also want to mention this next part I'm talking about is currently speculation, but I am basing it off facts that the story's already given us. During the Whole Cake Island saga, Luffy has a flashback after his first round with Katakuri. Rayleigh during this convo specifically says that among the strongest in the world, you'll find some who can see a little bit into the future, meaning future sight as an ability is one that is usually known by those who are among the strongest in the world. This tells me that Shanks uses this ability against high level opponents and can likely use it against his own fellow top tiers. The weakest of this mightiest is likely someone like Katakuri, at least from the individuals we've seen in the story so far, but I find it highly unlikely Shanks is known as the Killer of Observation for going around the world cutting off Katakuri level opponents' future sight. So at least to me, it probably makes more sense that he uses this in top tier fights, but again, this seeps more into headcanon, so I'm not going to use that as fact. Shanks can also infuse his sword with armament Haki, making him a proficient user of it, just like the samurai on Wano. I think he's at the very least on their level when it comes to this. But considering his Vivre card says he used to match Mihawk in swordsmanship, who is the strongest swordsman in the world and currently more skilled than Shanks, I think it's likely he can use the highest levels of armament Haki with this sword as well. Finally, Shanks recently has used Future Sight in the manga, and I'll expand on that later in Shanks' section. But before that, we're going to start with his encounter with Whitebeard. Shanks goes to meet Whitebeard and showcases his Conqueror's Haki, which the strongest crew in the world, the Whitebeard Pirates, call overwhelming, as it destroys their ship with his casual use of it. After the disagreement about Ace and Whitebeard, Whitebeard and Shanks actually clash and split the skies with one another. Whitebeard at this point in this story being referred to as the strongest pirate in the world by not only the manga volume intros, but magazines, data books, the manga itself, and the Ace novel. It's more believable that Whitebeard is the strongest pirate in the world at this point, due to Whitebeard having his medicine which stabilizes his condition. So Shanks clashing with this Whitebeard and splitting the skies with him definitely makes Shanks look impressive. Upon his arrival at Marineford, Shanks is able to arrive at the battlefield undetected and get so close to Akainu that he can block his Magma Fist attack, which the Blue Deep Databook hypes Shanks up for, due to Shanks being able to do this while only possessing one arm. Fast forwarding to Wano, we see Shanks, while off the coast of the island, use his Conqueror's Haki to attack Green Bull and paralyze him, while also taking him out of his Logia form. Mind you, Green Bull is deep on the island, which is crazy for Shanks just range-wise. Considering that Shanks is able to intimidate Green Bull with his Haki, and this type of Haki is based on overwhelming an opponent that's weaker than you, I would say it's safe to say Shanks is above Green Bull in power. Something else is pretty good to mention here as well is that Yamato, another Advanced Conqueror's Haki user, compliments Shanks' Haki, saying it was incredible. Shanks in the next arc actually has an interaction with the Kid Pirates. This is where it said Kid and company never actually made it to Shanks when they fought the Red Hair Pirates previously, which, like I said before, is likely to avoid Kid and Killer comparing Shanks and Kaido during Wano. Shanks uses his future sight to see the devastation that Kid will cause with his damn punk attack. Kid also says that he'll crush all of these boats in 10 seconds flat, which implies that Shanks can see 10 seconds into the future, which is probably the highest we've ever seen, at least putting a number count on it. Shanks is able to quickly close the distance before the attack is even launched, with Kid not even being able to defend himself from the Emperor's attack. To make it even worse, Killer tries to help Kid defend Shanks' divine departure, but ends up being a side piece for Shanks' attack and ends up defeated along with Kid. Shanks seemingly ends Kid's pirate career, just like Luffy's pirate career was quote-unquote ended during the Sabaody Archipelago arc. So now comparing the two is a bit weird, as they have some history that I've yet to mention in this video. During the Marineford saga, Shanks and Kaido have a minor clash or scuffle due to Kaido wanting to fight Whitebeard. The Marines report that Shanks had a scuffle with Kaido the day before Marineford War, and we see Shanks and his crew arrive unscathed. There are multiple factors I want to break down before I move on from this point. So 1, I don't see a route in the story where Shanks straight up fought Kaido and got out unscathed. 2, King's Vivre card only cites him and Kaido going to Marineford, which Queen and Jack both lack on their Vivre cards. And 3, I want to talk about Kaido's reaction to all of this afterwards. Taking these factors into account, it's certainly possible to eliminate certain scenarios that could have happened. So I already explained 1, as I don't think Shanks would fight Kaido for any period and end up absolutely clean the way he was at Marineford, so it's highly unlikely they had a fully fledged fight. Moving on to 2, this tells me that Kaido likely moved out quickly to intercept Whitebeard if he really only brought King. The Vivre cards only mention King, so I'm going to move forward assuming only King was with Kaido and maybe some weaker subordinates. This also adds to the case that it's unlikely Kaido would have had a fully fledged fight with Shanks, considering he had his crew with him, as they sailed with Shanks to Marineford afterwards. Kaido fighting a Yonko crew with only King would be weird, as he is not only outnumbered, but the Red Hair Pirates are known to not be above jumping people, as they say they aren't saints even in chapter 1. They only stayed out of the Whitebeard and Shanks meeting, as it was supposed to be a discussion and not a real combat scenario. The last thing is Kaido's thoughts afterward, which I think is reflected in the rooftop during Wano, where Kaido puts Shanks among names like Whitebeard, Odin, Roger, and Rox as people that he believes can truly fight him. This alone makes this a good fight, as Kaido acknowledges Shanks, which I believe is due to a clash they might have had during their small meeting before their group separated. This only happened in the anime, but we actually see Kaido back on Onigashima during Ace's death, and we know this is the case because Yamato's Vivre card of Ace disappears while Kaido is still sitting on his throne at Onigashima. Now, with all of that out of the way, what do I think of this matchup? So I would say for sure feats-wise, Kaido is definitely above Shanks with everything we saw in Wano. He arguably just straight up has the best feats in the story alongside Luffy. Shanks clashing and splitting the sky with Whitebeard while he's said to be the strongest pirate is actually good for him, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's equal to this Whitebeard. We saw base Luffy clash with Kaido and split the sky, even though Kaido was able to use more of his power and defeat that same Luffy while he was in Gear 4. So splitting the sky doesn't inherently mean you two are equal in power. Although Shanks overwhelmed Green Bull, I also established I believe Kaido was also above Green Bull as well, so it doesn't really mean too much, especially when I can't see Shanks conquering another conqueror like Kaido. I do, however, think they're on a similar level, even if Kaido is provably stronger for now, as Kaido himself acknowledges Shanks as an individual who can fight him, which may imply he thinks that, like Odin, Shanks could possibly defeat him. So no matter what, they're probably close in terms of power. So Kaido should probably win, but it's very possible Shanks could invalidate Kaido's feats with his own during story progression or a power cliff. It is also possible that Shanks and Kaido are close in power, and if you believe Shanks can negate Kaido's future sight, he would have an advantage at that point, as I think we all believe Shanks is over someone like Zoro, who can scar Kaido with his bigger attacks. So Shanks is likely capable of this as well, considering he should only be a small amount weaker than Mihawk in swordsmanship, due to Mihawk waiting for someone to surpass Shanks in order to fight him. Which says to me they're probably not too far off from each other in that aspect. So this matchup as of now is really close, but if you pin me down on it, feats wise I'll just have to lean towards Kaido, but I can definitely see Shanks surpassing Kaido in the future depending on how the story goes.